This is absolutely ridiculous. I'll show you what I'm talking about in just a second, okay, everybody? Give me 1 second. I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about so you'll see the frustration at hand, okay? Let me show you. I'm taking a screenshot, all right? And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Every show, we have to go through this. And then I'll do the introduction and you know, of what I always do. But I just want to show you this, okay? Let me see. Let me make it smaller so my eye will not be on. Okay, we'll do it now. Save. All right. I want you guys to take a look at this. Before Carl, he'll be joining us shortly. He gave me the thumbs up and everything. He'll be here in just shortly. Okay, so give it a minute. Okay, we're supposed to be streaming on the Red Pill Diaries, the Red Pill Journals, Twitch, Twitter, Locals, Odyssey, and Rumble. Let me put this closer because I want you all to see. Every single flipping time. Those are notices after you go live that your stream has been cut. Your stream has been cut. So this is what I'm telling you. This is absolutely insane what's going on. And they continue to do this to this platform. You would think that we had 700,000 subscribers for them to continue to do this. But I got a Patreon show that's coming on this week, okay? A live Patreon stream and a live channel member stream, which are different streams that'll come up this week. And I'll be discussing something that took place, everybody. And it's going to blow your mind, okay? And once I tell you these things and I show you, all right, because I have proof of what I'm saying, it's going to blow your mind. I'm not going to tell you what it's pertaining to. Well, I will. They tried to get me on the other side, the other team. They tried to recruit me on the other team. And I got proof of this, okay? And when I did not play ball, this is what I'm getting constantly. Everything. I'm telling you this. So there is I wouldn't say a physical hit out for me, but there is I would say a political and geopolitical hit out for me because I refuse their offers, okay? And I'll show it to you guys on Patreon, and I'll show it to you guys on the channel stream. I won't show it to you on this one because it might get me kicked off of YouTube, all right? But again, thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God green earth. This is the platform for your liberation, education, and empowerment. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your host, your brother, and your friend. If you like truth, I'm Rashid. Hey, let's get into it. We're going to wait for Carl. Let me see something real quick, because remember, he's in Bali. So there's a time discrepancy, okay? And let me hit him up real quick. I'll do it on Twitter real quick, because that might get him quicker. All right. We are live and waiting for you. All right, here we are. All right, so the streams on Locals and on Rumble have been disconnected. All right, so they're not going through, so nobody will be able to watch it over there. We'll just upload it or whatever if we get a chance to. But let's get into the news while we're waiting for Carl to join us. All right, and I also want to tell everybody that Tom Luongo, he hit me up. I missed it at the end of the show. He hit me up on the phone. I thought I saw something pop up, and he said he really apologizes. His schedule was mixed up, all right? And something took place, and he's going to make it up for us. And he asked me when I could do it, and I told him we'll probably have to do it next week or something like that, okay? But he did hit me up. So for those of you who were waiting to see Tom, you're going to see him on a different date. He did hit me up. But let's go into the news real quick. Oh, man, I tell you what. All right, here we are. So we're looking at a collapsing empire. I notice now more and more people, the alternative media now, I think pressure from this channel is causing some of them to address some of the issues that they would sidestep or omit or just touch upon and dance around and keep going. I think that the pressure from this show is forcing these bigger platforms to start addressing the things that are going on in Palestine, the things that are going on in Africa, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia in a more honest way. in a more honest way. And what I mean by honest is this: talking to your viewers with honesty, passion, and truth, right? And addressing issues that may cause some of your viewers to either turn away from you, stop supporting you, or force them to like reevaluate everything. And I think that now, because of this show, some of them are starting to do that. And I think sometimes when you address people, you're going to irritate them, you're going to aggravate them, and you're going to alienate people because they have a preconceived notion of what things are. And when you're telling them that, no, things are not like this, listen, here's the facts, here, and here. Sometimes it takes people a while to accept that. And sometimes they have to be forged through the fire to accept what you're saying, okay? But now we have a lot of the I would say the alternative media being forced into it. And as I always say, I might not be the biggest channel, but I'm your favorite channel. You can believe that. Go listen to him after I do a show. Go listen to him. If you don't believe so, go listen to him. I'm your favorite channel. Okay. So let's go to the news real quick. All right. Because let's see, I just got a message. Hold on 1 second. I'm trying to see if it's called. Give me a second. No, it's not called. Anyway, let's go to something real quick because there's so much to discuss. And Carl will wait for Carl. If he's not on in about 20 minutes, we're gonna call it a day, and then we'll get him back on. And I'll do a special stream this weekend for you guys. I hate that things like this happen, but I'm dealing with some stuff that the powers that be are doing to me now because I refused their offer to come over to the other side. And those of you who are members, channel members, will get a look at the offer that was presented to me. Those of you who are patron members, when I do a patron stream, you're going to get a look at the offer that was presented to me. And immediately I declined it completely. Okay. And from that point on, I've been having problems with the guest schedules, the streaming, all of that stuff. Like, it didn't happen out of the blue. Okay. But we're going to go into something real quick. So now, as we know, on one of the previous shows, as a matter of fact, the last show, which was yesterday or day before yesterday, I addressed some things about the sinking of a Russian naval vessel. Now, I watched some alternative media, and a few of them gave I would think, a good, honest assessment of the situation. I give credit where credit is due. Okay. One in particular, did a pretty good job of explaining it, and I'm going to tell you who that person is. Okay. I give credit where credit is due. I don't even, I'm not saying I have any problems with them, because I don't, and they don't have any problems with me as far as I know. But I will mention people that are, when they do a good job. Okay. And Alexander McCurbis, I think that's his name. That's his name, McCurbis. And Alexander, if you watch this and I mispronounce your name, charge it to my head and not to my heart. I'm a country boy, and it's just that accent, okay? So please forgive me. Now, in my house, I'm the only country person in my house, believe it or not. All of my other, my wife, my children, all of them, they speak proper English, quote unquote, right? I'm the country person in the house. Okay, so I think he did an excellent job on his take of what took place with the sinking of the ship. Okay, CC is in the building. Your fave is in the building. And thank you. Let me put this on the screen also. I appreciate it. I truly appreciate it. Let's see. CC is in the building. I got to give up. And Incognito is in the building. Let me put Incognito up also. I got to go back and put Random Zebra, because Random was the first one in the building. So I got to do that. Okay, let me scroll down, and we're gonna have a chat with each other. Okay. Um, let's see. Reven Van Hosen, please. If I'm mispronouncing it, please don't get mad at me. I'm doing the best that I can. I really am. It says, I watch you to get your insights. My favorite shows are when you just talk about what's going on, and also shows when you have your friend Rashid as co-host. Well, you know what? Rashid and I talked yesterday because he was supposed to be on the last few shows. You know, he fits it in his job schedule or whatever. And he didn't get the text messages or the emails until after the shows. I'm talking about later in the evening after the shows. And that goes with what I was going to tell you about on the channel stream and on the Patreon stream that's coming up, okay? About what they're doing right now to alienate subscribers and channel members and patrons and everything else. Shout out to V is in the building. So let us talk about now, before I do go into something, check it out now. I just pulled up 1, 2, just at least 3, 4, 5, just on the top of my head, about 7 people, 6 or 7 people, just on the screen, okay? Now watch after the show, it'll say 2 or 3 or 4 views. That's crazy, right? This is what they're doing. But anyway, we're going to pass that and we're going to go into something. So I thought Alexander McCurvis did an excellent job explaining his views on the sinking of the Russian ship. I actually think he's probably the best European analyst on those matters. You know, I think he does a real good job. I disagree with certain things from time to time, but it's no big thing, okay? But I think he's the best one out of Europe that does it. He and his partner Alex Christoforou, I think that they do a real good job, okay? And I'm gonna give credit where credit is due, even if I'm not acknowledged or anything. I will do that because I'm not petty, okay? Well, I can be petty, but I'm not petty. So on this thing of this sinking of this ship, a lot of them brushed it away. Even my guy Alexander, when he said, well, this does not affect the outcome of the war. And I think he did that with honesty. I'm going to be honest with you. I believe that he believed that, and I believe that when he spoke to the people, he spoke, from his heart when he was saying that. So, but listen, how many times does Russia have to suffer a loss of a ship? It could be a little small little scuba boat or something like that, or a small little rusty ship. How many times do they have to suffer this to avoid a bigger war? If you're doing all the avoiding, right, after a while it becomes cowardice, right? If someone is constantly poking at you and coming in your neighborhood and coming in your house and you're avoiding them constantly, it becomes cowardice. You understand what I'm saying? I don't think a lot of people apply everyday actions to government actions, but they're one and the same. The people mimic the government and vice versa. All right. So listen, we've seen them hit a Russian submarine and dock. We've seen them attack boats. We've seen them sink the Moskva warship. We've seen them hit smaller boats, and we've seen them hit this latest boat, sinking it. Okay. Now, the reports are that nobody died. That's what the reports are saying now. Okay. But now, those ships are tens of millions and even billions of dollars, right? And then think about the money that you have to spend on the training of crews, right? The deployment of armaments on the ships, okay? Now, those might be pinpricks in Russia's military, right? But yet and still, they are strikes on Russia's military. Now, to give you an understanding of what I'm saying, America is illegally occupying 1/3 of Syria, right? If anyone that is related to the Syrian Arab Republic strikes America's illegal base, fires on America's illegal base, no matter how big, no matter how small, there is a military response, even though America is there illegally. And they have said that they will show that they have the right to self-defense and that they will not show any fear or cowardice, right? See, those people in office, they understand this thing here. Perception. Perception, you might be winning the ground war, but perception can cause other people who are watching your actions and who are looking for someone with power and someone who has the ability to strike back and someone who has the resolve to strike back. And then you go and you turn your head every time you're hit. After bold statements, right? America strikes the Syrian government, the Syrian militias, the Iranian-assisted militias, the Iraqi government, the Iraqi supported militias. They've even struck Iranian officials, right? Even though they're in that region illegally, they still understand perception, okay? America is the master of Walt Disney or make-believe. Perception will have people standing with you if they believe that you have the wherewithal and the resolve to do something, even if you don't have the military capabilities to. But if they perceive that if you're putting off this aura of confidence, people will gather around you. But when they start seeing you ignoring strike after strike after strike on your military bases, that's what they'll do. They'll start real praising their stand with you. Well, yeah, Russia is right in what they're doing. Yeah, Russia has the right to do X, Y, and Z. But I don't know, because they wouldn't even strike Britain. They wouldn't even strike UK forces in Europe after knowing that the UK used those missiles to strike Russian military facilities. They wouldn't even strike the U.S. when the U.S. used those HIMARS and launched a massive attack in the Donbass, or launched an attack in Volgograd. People start looking at that because what they're looking for is something outside of American power that can deal with America until they build up their military and their capabilities. And when you don't fight back against Russia is fighting back against Ukraine. Russia is fighting back against NATO in Ukraine, against NATO forces in Ukraine, right? But the war is not confined to Ukraine. This is what I'm saying. When you bring the war to my doorsteps, as a man of the house, I have to defend the house and the household, or else I'm not even worth anything. If I allow anyone to strike my children, my wife would say, hey, look, Rashid, you gotta go. Or listen, we love you, but you're no use for us. You're not protecting us, because that is your main job as a man. What is the main job as the president of a nation? Is to guide the nation in good and bad times, to project confidence and power, and to use everything at your disposal to protect the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, and the livelihood of the citizens of that nation and that nation itself, right? Right? So let's say, for instance, Russia strikes back and destroys a few bases, because one thing they did do was strike some NATO facilities in Ukraine. But here's the kicker. Why would you even do it now? Why didn't you do it back then when they were striking? You should have just bombed every building, every one of them, to let them know, listen, this is the price. If my soldiers have to fight and die, if my citizens have to get the fallback effect of you and your terrorist actions, then I have to make you bleed also. I just can't be walking around here with the bloody nose. That's not the way things are. That's not the way things should be. Again, if we look at the situation in its entirety, even Vladimir Putin admitted one of his greatest regrets was to not act when they were doing what they were doing in the Donbass region. I have been telling you that. I said, listen, I think he made a strategic mistake. I've been telling you that for the longest. Those rebels, those militias in the Donbass region were on their way to Kyiv. They had already dismantled the Ukrainian armed forces in the Donbass region. Even the Western reports were saying that the militias could be in Kyiv within a few days. And when they knew this, guess what happened? America, France, the UK, and who else? Germany, and a couple of them got together and said, "Hey, we gotta talk to Vladimir Putin and keep him from allowing these militias." And I see Carl in the booth. I'm gonna finish this thought and I'm gonna bring Carl up. To allow these militias to go to Kiev and take Kiev, Russia should have allowed that to happen because the United States and the government that they put in place was illegitimate anyway. That is my opinion. Let me bring Carl in, and we're going to get into all of the news. My guy Carl is in the building. How's it going, my friend, my brother?
Hey, Rashid. Long time no see.
Yes,
always good to see you.
Hey, Carl. There was Vladimir Putin. He came up and he said that one of his greatest regrets was not acting as he should have in 2014 when the militias had the Ukrainian forces on the road. What is your perception of that? Because had he acted, things would have been much different today.
Oh, that's for sure. Because the West never had the intention to implement the Minsk agreement, which was supposed to freeze the conflict in eastern Ukraine. Instead, they used the 8 years between 2014 and 2022 to stockpile weapons, to arm Ukraine military, to train them with NATO tactics, and to integrate them into the NATO command structure. And we've seen the result of it in the early phase of 2022 the special military operation, because in 2014, Ukraine didn't have any kind of military strength to speak of. Like the Ukrainian military were being stopped by militias from East Ukraine, by a bunch of miners, union workers, and I mean but I think the calculus for Russia was different back then, because Russia in 2014 wasn't at a point where they're ready to make a break with the West the way they were in 2022. If we recall, in 2014, the so-called collective West, led by United States, still looked fairly strong. They just did the Arab Spring. They had, their fostered ISIS and Al Qaeda forces were marching on Damascus in Syria, and so it made tactical sense back then for Putin to hammer out the Minsk agreement in the hope that the Western alliance would abide by it and effectively freeze the conflict in eastern Ukraine. But now, in the hindsight, we know that didn't work because the West never had intention to stick through the Minsk agreement. And they were just buying time so they can confront Russia further down the road. And that's 2022. So in a sense, Putin was right. Like in 2014, Russian military would have much easier time if they decide to take action in East Ukraine. But at the same time, because at the same time, it's hard to foresee future, right? You can't really tell the future. I mean, in 2014, how would you know there's going to be? I mean, at that time, Azov and the neo-Nazi element is already strong in Ukraine. They were being empowered to do the Maidan takeover. But at that time, you can't really foresee that by 2022 they'll pretty much do a takeover of the whole government. They could dictate basically to Zelensky. When Zelensky at one point told them to pull back, they just basically stick a middle finger to him, and Zelensky had to back off. And this is so I mean 2020 hindsight is 2020. From now 2024, yeah, Putin probably should have gone in 10 years ago, but but from 2014, the future is still cloudy. I mean, I think he made the best decision based on what he had know back then. I mean, obviously now looking back, we know the West is not to be trusted, right? So, yeah.
So what do you think about now? America is now up in the ante in the South China Sea, in the Taiwan Strait. And the media is saying this. And here's the thing: I gotta preface that with this, Carl. China aggressive stance. China is being belligerent in the Pacific. So I have to say that before you say anything. So keep that in mind while you're addressing it.
Well, of course, it's China's aggressive stance, because what else would compel United States to cross the entire Pacific to South China Sea, and more specifically to the Kinmen Islands, which is literally a couple kilometers off the Chinese coast, where U.S. stick its special forces, the Green Berets. It's kind of mind-boggling. The CNN actually did a segment on it, and they actually put a map of Kinmen Island. I mean, I think that's their mistake. If they don't put a map, people in America, they will have no idea where Kinmen Island is. But if you put Kinmen Island on a map, you can literally see how close it is to the Chinese coast, and how ridiculous it is to stick the U.S. Special Forces there. And so why U.S. is doing this? Well, when you are failing in a two-front war in Ukraine and in the Middle East, the only thing to do, the logical thing to do, of course, is open a three-front war because that will guarantee your victory. I mean, I think they're not serious about actually starting a confrontation right now with China. What they're doing is distraction. They're distraction from being particularly Israeli atrocities in Gaza and the U.S. impotence in stopping the Ansar Allah blockade of in Red Sea. Because like a few months ago, we have all these NATO fans posting on Twitter saying, "Oh, we're gonna show them why we don't have free healthcare." Then they post the videos of U.S. aircraft carrier groups sailing into the Red Sea. Well, now it's March, and guess what? They haven't made a dent into the Yemeni blockade, which I said back then it's gonna fail, because what can they do? They have been blockading and bombing Yemen for over 10 years now. Ever since the 2014 Yemen civil war, U.S. have been supporting a proxy war by Saudi, UAE on Yemen. 10 years, Yemeni people didn't bend. They're not gonna care if a couple more bombs thrown their way, and they're serious about this blockade to support people of Palestine, and they have the capability to do it. So the U.S. all they can do is send a couple warship and send a couple bombs, but that's not going to significantly degrade the Ansar-Allah's missile capability, and they won't be able to do it unless they launch a ground invasion. Of course, ground invasion will be even crazier, and they just don't have any good options. The funny thing is those same American empire dead enders, they're saying, "Oh, you got conflict with China, we can just block the Strait of Malacca, then China will have to bend its knees." Look, how is a operation what they call it, the Prosperity Guardian, going on in the Red Sea? I mean, you think you can blockade Strait of Malacca when you can't even break through the siege of Red Sea? I mean, come on. You are facing off against Yemen, and you can't win, and you think you can win against China. I mean, the delusion is just mind-boggling.
Do you think that the people in Washington, D.C., in London, in Brussels, in Berlin, and in Paris are starting to panic because, again, we see everywhere that they used to exercise unrivaled influence and power. They're being challenged at every point, and every time you look to Africa, Russia is there illegally. Not America now, but Russia. China is there exploiting. Now we're talking about colonizers talking about China exploiting Africa. Then they're in the Middle East doing the same thing. They're even in Europe doing the same thing, trying to block out Russia and China. Do you think that these people are panicked in such a manner that they're just throwing anything up against the wall to see if they can stop the hemorrhaging of the U.S. empire?
Did you hear that statement by Joseph Borrell, the foreign minister of EU? And he just came out like last week, and he basically admitted, like, the end of the Western hegemony is here.
Yes.
Yeah, and he said, we have to be very careful to avoid a West versus the rest mentality, because that's going to lead to our defeat. But then, few paragraphs down the road, his solution is, we got to double down in Ukraine. We got to double down in our support in Ukraine. It's like, oh my God, you just like, you knew what the problem is, but you can't just steer away from the same approach that leads you to the problem in the first place, right? And it talks about it needs to shore up support for Ukraine. It needs to confront China. It's like, dude, you are just doing the same thing that's got you in trouble in the first place. It's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It's like when Biden was asked if the bombing campaign in Yemen was doing any good, and he's like, no, but we're gonna keep on doing it. This is absolutely insane.
And the reason I ask you those things is because what you were just saying. It seems if something is not working and you've tried it over and over and over again, it's time to reevaluate that policy so that you can find a way to make your policy work. But instead, they double, triple, and quadruple down on failed policies. And to me, that is a sign of either stupidity or being inebriated on imperial hubris. One of the two.
It can be both, Rashid. It can be both. I mean, at this point, I think you're right. They're panicking. They really don't know what to do. So they got to stick to the same thing they've been doing all this time before. The problem is it's also vested interest, right? I mean, the whole NATO bureaucracy is invested to keep Russia enemy. If Russia becomes a friend, why do we need all these NATO bureaucrats for? They're literally protecting their own job. They're protecting their own behind, and this is why they gotta keep pouring billions of dollars into Ukraine. But the problem is, as we talked about earlier, the billions of dollars, 1 billion here, 2 billion here, at the end of the day, it's just paper. You can't. What is the billions of dollars getting you? Because Europe and the United States have so deindustrialized. They can print money up to the wazoo all they want. It doesn't mean they can produce artillery shells for the Ukraine.
Right.
And in a land war, artillery is still the king. Mm-hmm. And Russia, as you mentioned before, Russia is outproducing the entire NATO countries combined, and Russia and North Korea, by the way. and so this is what people, because people they can't. The problem is obvious. The Western economy are so financialized. They're not making real things anymore. That's all offshore to East Asia, right? Which now they want to wage war against China, the world's factory. When a lot of the source components rare earth materials, ultimately would have to be sourced from China. Think about that for a second. And they think, oh, okay, we in order to preserve our hegemony, we gotta slap down all potential competitors, including China, who we have who is making everything. And uh, yeah, this just does not work. And I think enough people have realized this is a dead end, but they can't deviate from the course because their jobs, their reputation, everything is staking on it. They can't. It's like they're on the Titanic, but they see the big iceberg
Yes.
ahead.
Yes.
But they're like, no, we got to stay the course. We got to stay the course.
It is absolutely crazy. First, Chaotic Brain, thank you so much for your super chat, and thank you for being a channel member. I really, really appreciate it. This is Joseph Burrell. He says, and this is quoted from the United News of India. Let me pull it up real quick. And here we go. He says, Joseph Burrell admits era of Western dominance is over. And think about that is from Mr. Europe is the garden and everybody else is the jungle. Think about the difference, the 180 turn he had to do. First, it was Europe is the garden and we must keep all of the people out because they may ruin our garden. And now he's saying that the end of the garden is right now. So with that said, let's go back on something that was announced just yesterday about the war queen, Victoria Nuland, and and resigning. And Incognito brings up a point right here. And he says, I heard Nuland being investigated for missing $10 billion. So she resigned. Rats fleeing a sinking ship. You can have that question. You can have that statement right there.
So I actually saw a tweet from Nicholas Burns, the U.S. ambassador to China, and he literally tweeted out, Victoria Nuland, she's the heart and soul of the U.S. Foreign Service. I was just laughing. I mean, because he's right. He's right. Victoria Nuland is the heart and soul of U.S. foreign policy. It's more like the heart of darkness. And she just epitomized everything that's wrong with the U.S. empire. And, I think I'm just guessing here. There's multiple reasons. Somebody had to take the fall for the failed Ukrainian policy. Mm-hmm. I mean, Victoria Nuland is the obvious target because he is in the forefront of pushing this war in Ukraine. Since the Euromaidan, she was the one that's handing out cookies. Everybody's remember the Cookie Monster handing out the cookies on Maidan Square. And so right, I think right now, the DNC, the Democratic establishment, they're scrambling, trying to save Biden's election campaign, and I think Nuland just happened to be the fall girl, for someone have to someone have to face the axe for the U.S. foreign policy. Might as well be Nuland. This is my guess.
Mm-hmm. Lex Burren says he's talking about the maiden coup. He says maiden coups. That's right. He says Crimea voted in a referendum to be returned to Russia. That's right. Donbass and other regions asked Putin for help because they were being genocided in the Donbass. They burned people in Odessa. Let us not forget that. Let us not forget that they trapped people in buildings and they set the buildings on fire with those people alive inside. And the Western press overlooked that. And he says also, and now they are genociding Gaza as well with Zionists. I can't say the other one because they might throw me off YouTube, but Zionist Khazars. So do you think that there will be an explosion of violence because we see Israel becoming more and more desperate also? Because let's look at this from an outside view. Their economy is held together with spit and glue because it takes the United States and the European Union to inject liquidity into the Israeli economy. They can only sustain themselves militarily through U.S. shipments of weapons. But the United States economy is in tatters. The European Union economy is in tatters. The European Union has no weapons to spare. The United States has no weapons to spare. And all while that is going on, Netanyahu continues to provoke Hezbollah.
I think that's his game. I think his game is trying to drag U.S. directly into a war, a wider Middle Eastern war in Lebanon and in Middle East. And so this is his way of ensuring continued U.S. support for Israel. It's by dragging U.S. directly into the conflict. I mean, I don't think even Israeli military is stupid and insane enough wanting to launch another ground invasion of Lebanon by themselves, because we know they will get their ass kicked, just like back in 2000s, and especially at this juncture when they had their hands full committing atrocity in Gaza. So I think their real aim is to force U.S. hands and to get U.S. involved into Middle East, which is what U.S. does not want to do. Because what the U.S. establishment really want to do is they want to pivot to Asia to confront China. This is why you have people like, there's already a section of the U.S. Elite, represented by people like Tucker Carlson, who wants to make nice with Russia so U.S. can concentrate on China. Tucker Carlson pretty much said so himself on a recent interview, and he said, I don't see why we should be having a beef with Russia, because in his words, Russia is Christian and Western, because Russia's culture is still based in Western civilization, and whereas China is so different from us. The rise of China is scary. He basically voiced what we have been said all along on your show, that U.S. is scared of a non-Western, non-white nation rising to the top. And so there's the part of the U.S. elite represented by Tucker's, represented by John Mearsheimer, had long advocated to make peace with Russia to concentrate on China. But that's not going to work. We saw that in the first Trump administration. Trump tried to do that, but all the Democrats and the NATO bureaucracy wouldn't let him, because that would invalidate NATO. So they had to drag him into having a confrontational stand with Russia, and that eventually led to 2022. So right now, I think the garden is failing. The jungle is taking over because the gardeners are stupid. That's the situation right now. We are ruled by a bunch of stupid and incompetent elite who don't know what they're doing. They have high aspirations. They want to aspire to continually remain on the top, to dominate the world, but they're too incompetent and too stupid to do it.
As I told you, this wise person told me years ago to watch out for a conflict. This is when it was not even thought about. And I believe he told me this it was a long time, decades ago. He was saying that, listen, as China rises, because they're going to rise, he said the United States will feel threatened. He said, and they will try to make war with China in Asia. And that when they finally do, China will be on par with them militarily, and the Chinese, and these are will beat the brakes off of them. This is what he said. He said, and the Chinese will, because they have something that they're fighting for, not for hegemony, for territorial integrity and on principles. And he said that, and this is long before they had the Quad or anything else. He was telling me about that Britain would take part and Australia. And he said that China is going to roll over Australia as if it was a parking lot. That's what he said, and as the Asian nations see America getting beat, they're going to remember all the stuff that she did to them, and then they're going to put their lot in with China, and they're going to run America out of Asia's politics. And this is what was told to me years ago. So when I'm watching this stuff, I'm thinking back on the things that were told to me. So I'm seeing a little clearer than a lot of other people that watch these things. And I don't think that they see the inherent racism in the policy against China by the United States and the West. They had no problem with Germany rising economically at the time, but and they had no problem with China rising so long as they controlled that rise. And China was just a manufacturer, and they would recycle the money in U.S. treasuries and stuff. When China got to be independent and started learning the crafts and the trades of what the United States had, it became a problem. Just as if it became a problem with Japan when the Japanese, most people don't realize this, that in the 80s, the Japanese economy almost supplanted the United States economy, and the Japanese are considered, quote unquote, U.S. allies, and the United States sabotaged their economy to remain number one. But this time, they have a power like China that is not in the Western pockets. They're not compliant with Western dictates, and they see this as the greatest threat to the Anglo Western architecture of the world. What say you on that matter?
I mean, the Asian nation don't even have to go back to the ancient history. They're just going to be defending their own self-interest. Because if you look at all these chicken hawks, the armchair generals talking about war with China, the first thing they say, oh, we're going to choke off the Strait of Malacca so that China won't get its oil from Middle East and its grain shipment. But what they're not thinking is, when you block off the Strait of Malacca, you're not just blocking off the traffic to China. You're blocking the traffic to the entire world. You know, all the nations in the region, even Japan and South Korea, they're also depending on Strait of Malacca for their fuel and their food. And all the Southeast Asian nations, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, everyone depends on the Strait of Malacca for trade. You are blocking off the livelihood of everyone. I mean, I can't think of a quicker way of turning everyone against you. You know, and I said that on a tweet. I'm saying I'm pretty sure there are quicker ways of ending the U.S. American empire, but I just can't think of any. I mean, like the moment you're trying to block off the Strait of Malacca, you are turning the whole world against you because you are trying to plunge the world economy into the shitters, and for what? And for what? And so this is why if you want to get all the Asian nations lined behind China, yeah, you go ahead and block the Strait of Malacca.
you know, Carl. On that, as we're talking about it, I was just thinking, because I bring this point up all the time. What sense does it make, even if you feel threatened by China, if 93 to 95% of all your goods come from China, and China holds over $1 trillion in your bonds? How insane is that to try to sanction China and try to wage war against a person that is financing your government and also accepting your worthless dollars for goods, because that's all you're doing. You're paying for it with worthless dollars, and China is shipping the goods to the United States. When war breaks out, China is just going to embargo the United States. That will bring the economy to a screeching halt.
I think this is why in that same Tucker Carlson interview, he said, oh, he's trying to explain why United States is tackling Ukraine and Middle East instead of tackling China. He said, well, it's kind of like you're trying to procrastinating, putting off on the harder problem. You know, you just try to do something to occupy your mind. Because, you know, China is a harder problem. They don't have any easy way to contain China's rise, you know, because if you try to hurt China, you are hurting yourself. You're cutting off your own arms and legs. So this is a problem they're all struggling with right now. All the Western elite, they try different ways. Now they try to, instead of say decoupling, they say de-risking. Okay, we just have to isolate on some small key sectors like semiconductors. We're gonna cut them off. But the effect, as we've seen, is exactly opposite. That leads to the Chinese indigenization
Yep.
of the semiconductor technology. China spent like something like $450 billion on importing chips every year. Guess what? What if China don't have to spend $450 billion importing chips? That money then can be all used to devote to the develop research and development inside China to build up China's own semiconductor chip industry. Before, China spent more money importing chips than importing oil. Imagine that when China finally produced cutting edge semiconductors on its own, all these Western companies will permanently lose their market access to China because then they have nothing to offer. And this is a lot of the Western tech company knows this, and they're screaming at Washington, saying like, "You guys don't know what you're doing," and the Washington elite are still doing it anyway because the people who work inside the Beltway bubble are so cut off from like everyday reality of American life. They're cut off from they don't know anything about manufacturing because, well, the manufacturing is gone from United States. They don't have any firsthand experience on manufacturing. They don't know how everything works, and they are right now. A lot of the policy mistake by United States self-inflicted, including like all these sanctions against Russia, against China, and now they're talking about they're trying to force sale TikTok again. They're trying to force ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, to sell TikTok to American-owned company. I mean, China is not going to allow that, and they're trying to pose this as a China bad thing. I just saw a reporter who said, "Oh, I talked to the TikTok people in China. They all say that if they agree to American demands, their top executive is going to be disappeared by the Chinese government." So they're making it like a China bad when it's the United States is trying to literally steal and rob a Chinese company of their intellectual prop. I mean, what they really want is the algorithm, because the TikTok algorithm, that's the true value. They want that to be owned by the Americans. And again, this is like 100% projection because in the news you read about Chinese stealing intellectual properties of U.S. company. Here they're attempting outright robbery by law passed by Congress. They're trying to take over a Chinese company. So I mean, I don't think they have good. I don't think they have any good solutions at this point to contain the rise of China. That's why they're doing this crazy things like sending Green Berets to Kinmen Islands. Like, what the hell are the like few dozen Green Berets gonna do on the Kinmen Islands? I mean, like, you think they're gonna be able to stop amphibious landing of the People's Liberation Army when the time comes? Of course not. I mean, this is just it's an act of provocation, right? Because right after the Green Berets showed up on Kinmen Islands and the Taiwan Coast Guard, they rammed a couple of mainland Chinese fishermen vessels, and that caused the death of 2 Chinese fishermen. And so the immediate consequence of that is China now sent their own Coast Guard to patrol Kinmen Islands waters, all around Kinmen Islands. And guess what? The Chinese mainland Chinese Coast Guard ship is much bigger than the Taiwan Coast Guard. So now China has effectively resumed control of the water around Kinmen Islands. So you have a bunch of Green Berets just sitting there on the island, seeing these like huge Chinese Coast Guard just circling around them. I mean, and they will be able to look across the water and look at the amazing cityscape of the Chinese city of Xiamen, just a couple kilometers, and they can't go there, and they cannot go there. Kinmen Island is not a very developed place because Taiwan deliberately left Kinmen Island undeveloped because it was to be the forefront of the war with mainland China. But on the other side, on the Chinese coast, Xiamen is one of the major Chinese port, and it has has very beautiful cityscape. People can Google it. So that's why I'm saying, like, all these American berets, they're just basically gonna be sitting on this small island drinking beer, looking at this amazing city across the water they can't go, and then they see this huge Chinese Coast Guard ship just making circle around them. I mean, they are literally being sent by their government as human sacrifice because their role is to be the tripwire. The idea of tripwire, if there's a war, there's a conflict, and if there's injury or capture of American personnel, that will furnish U.S. government as an excuse to get directly involved in the conflict. I mean, they are literally human shield. I mean, so I remember when I first posted that news, somebody asked, "Wait, don't tell me all the Green Berets they send over are black people." And and they posted that South Park cartoon. You know what I'm talking about? The Canadian bacon.
That's it. Well, I think it's, when it comes to like TikTok, I think it's a little bit more, because I believe that those big corporations like Instagram, Facebook, and all those are part of the intelligence alphabet thing, and what they want to do is prevent anybody from having the same capabilities that they have. That's why they always put blame on China. Oh, they're spying, they're doing this, when we know that the United States has an active spy program on Facebook and all the rest, because even Zuckerberg admitted to this. And I think that they're trying to attack China on multiple levels. Think about this. Not only have they attacked the chip industry, and they're attacking TikTok, they attacked Huawei, and now they're attacking the Chinese electric car industry, which rivals Elon Musk. And they are doing this stuff strategically to try to maintain a grip on the things that they once dominated. I'm gonna let you have the say on that, okay?
Exactly. I mean, the Facebook, they are part of the obviously they're part of the campaign to get TikTok either banned or have a forced sale to American company, because TikTok is eating lunch of Facebook. I mean, only old people use Facebook nowadays. I mean, that's true. That's just the truth. And they're also eating the lunch of Instagram. I mean, especially among the youth segment. So they have a vested interest to see either TikTok fail or they themselves get a piece of TikTok. So that's why they're the money that's funding the campaign in Congress to actively pushing for this. And as you say, them themselves are also part of the national NSA alphabet, right? The literal. And one of the big push for the tech war against China is the former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, because he had fat Pentagon contract to use AI for future Pentagon warfare against China. So he has a very vested interest to see. He's the one that's pushing for the chip sanction, because he wants to cripple China's AI industry. This is behind the ban on NVIDIA and all that. And so right now, what we have in the United States is we don't have, there's really one of the problems why U.S. policy seems so incompetent and incoherent is because there's, unlike China have these 5-year plans. They have national policy on development. U.S. we just have a bunch of different group of elite fighting for power, right? And so it's impossible to form a coherent industrial policy or national development strategy, because our elite don't care about national development. Our elite don't care about the rest of the Americans. For the rest of Americans are just flips from whom they can extract rent. I mean, they are the rent elite. They see this. Average American to them are no different from country, from the people of the global South. We're just a resource for them to do the resource extraction from, and so I mean, this is why over long term, I'm optimistic they're not going to be able to do anything to China, because China is kind of built themselves up to be this impenetrable fortress. They have nuclear weapons, they have hypersonic missiles with the delivery capability of those nuclear weapons. So I think in the end of the day, even the Pentagon planners understand this. I mean, they can talk about nuclear weapons, but that's all crazy talk. I just saw a War on the Rocks. It's a neocon funded think tank. They talk about the article is literally, we need to prepare our military for nuclear warfare. I mean, this is crazy talk, man. Like you kidding me? Nuclear warfare, and especially when the other nuclear power, China and Russia, have enough nukes to destroy United States. What are you talking about? I mean, mutually assured destruction is still a thing. You can't just pretend it doesn't exist. So yeah, I don't see they have a good solution. They will struggle, they will cry, they'll produce a lot of copium, but in the end, China will continue to rise, and US, unless the current crop of elite get thrown out, it's going to continue to be a shit show.
Well, back to something you said about mutually assured destruction. That goes back to something that I was just talking about with the attacks on Chinese companies and stuff. I believe that they have become so panicked in the West that they are saying, you know what, we have a shot in the dark to prevent China's rise. So let's just throw everything out there. Maybe something will stick. But if it doesn't and it leads to war, I believe some of these people believe that they would rather for it to go to end in a major war than to allow someone else to supplant the United States as the global hegemon. And on top of that, they often talk about China's copying the United States technology. And I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about how at one time, most people may not realize this, but a few years ago, they were saying that China was trying to mimic the United States when it comes to rail guns. Well, the United States gave up on rail guns, and China has mastered rail guns, and they have actual working rail guns on their warships, along with hypersonic missiles that the United States has yet to field. And I don't know if you can remember this, Carl, but America, they were talking about the Chinese always stealing technology. And then one day they unveiled their new destroyer, and it was a copy of the Chinese destroyer that the Chinese had for a few years. It was, so nobody talks about that, but I remember it. What say you on those matters, man?
And the new design for the next generation U.S. destroyer is not going to be. I mean, it doesn't exist. If everything goes according to their plan, maybe in the 2030s, you will get the first prototype. So whereas the China already have like more than five Type 55 destroyers right now deployed, and they have many more in the pipeline. And that's another thing. The U.S. doesn't have the shipbuilding capability. The U.S. have 7 shipyards. China has exactly. Thank you. China's shipbuilding capability is over 200 times. Any one of China's the largest China shipyard, Jiangnan shipyard, just off near Shanghai, is larger than all 7 of U.S. shipyards. And so right now, U.S. have to go to its vassal states, its allies in South Korea and Japan to help to source Navy warship building. And this is how the industrialized U.S. is. I used to say all U.S. have left is military Keynesianism, to build, at least are manufacturing weapons at home. That's not even true anymore. They have to go to South Korea and Japan for help for the naval buildup, because U.S. itself cannot match the Chinese shipbuilding capability. I mean, it's not even close.
So how can you even have? How can you? Let's just use common sense, because common sense is not so common today, especially in the Western world. Okay, you have a nation that has over $1 trillion of your debt. You have a nation that's your largest financer. You have a nation that supplies 93 to 95% of all goods on your shelf. You have a nation that has the largest army in the world, the largest now navy in the world. And they said within about 2025 to 2026, China will have the largest air force in the world. And you have this same nation that has a shipbuilding capacity of over 200 times that of not just the United States, I might add, but of the United States and NATO combined. How do you think a war will end up when your ship is sunk and you cannot replace it, but they can replace their ships in a magnitude of 200 times faster than you can? I mean, Carl, what do you have to say about this lunacy?
I guess the only thing I can think of right now, their plan is to have all their U.S. warship getting sunk in the Strait of Malacca, so they can block the traffic in the Strait of Malacca. That's the only realistic scenario I can see. They can have a tempted blockade of the Straits of Malacca. I mean, the thing is, China is not even looking for active military confrontation with the United States. China was perfectly fine to do business with everybody, including U.S. It's the U.S. that's like hell-bending on having a start a military confrontation with China, which is accelerating the China's own armament. Right, and I mean, like people, and these same Western analysts will say, "Oh, well, why does China need a large navy? Well, look, we know why China is building this navy for. You know, I mean, like they're not building the large navy just for Taiwan. You know, Taiwan is on the doorstep. They're not building like blue water projection capabilities just for Taiwan. They are building those navy because, you know, right now you have 11 aircraft carrier of United States floating around the world. That's why they're building their navy.
Mm-hmm. And Diane says, Russia, Iran, and China seem to have a bigger plan than we can see. They all three plan long term. That's true. But Alex says, ha ha ha, yeah, finally the West is losing after hundreds of years. It was about time for a fair world order. TNT, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, Rashid, I take the red pill diaries every day. Thank you so much. But I want to bring this up right here because this is funny right here to me. Anyway, this is from Incognito. I got to put this on the screen. He says, USA has great products like woke movies and airplanes with doors that fall off in the flight.
Yeah, so, I mean, like
go ahead.
Like what the hell is Osprey, right? Like that thing kills more American airmen. I mean, like in peacetime. That right now China is not even doing anything. The U.S. plane like F-35s are falling into the waters. And did you see what happened to that German destroyer in the Red Sea?
Yeah.
It attempt to fire a missile because they mistakenly identified a U.S. drone as they thought it was a Yemeni drone. So they tried to shoot a missile at a U.S. drone, trying to shoot it down, but then their own missile misfire and it blows up. I mean, this is the level of naval the NATO competency right now we're facing, and this is right after that British warship that backed itself into another warship in port. I mean, like, and on top of this, they have a recruitment crisis. The most advanced U.S. Aircraft carrier, the super carrier Ford, it's only 30%. There are 30% short staff because they couldn't recruit enough sailors. Well, I wonder why. You know, maybe young Americans don't want to die for Israel. I mean, who knows? It's just a crazy guess.
And don't forget, Carl, the British aircraft carrier is still in port because it has a lot of malfunctions going on. And don't forget that they had to pull out of one of their warships out of the Red Sea because it had no air defense system. And last week or so, Remember when they call themselves thumping their chest at Russia by testing their a intercontinental ballistic missile and it failed. So
and
these are
and
the problems
and
of the West.
And these are the people who like every 2 years they will come up with an article. Oh, the Britain is going to send HMS Elizabeth to South China Sea, and I'm like, to do what? To do what? You don't even have any planes. What are you going to do? I mean, like it's just ridiculous. I mean, like these are just copian produced to reassure their readership, their audience, that yeah, we are still the top dog in the world when the in fact the world is crumbling. I mean, like even the gardener himself, Joseph Borrell, admitted the garden is finished. Jungle is taking over, folks. The jungle is taking over.
Yeah, and this what we're talking about with the 200 times capacity. This was revealed by U.S. Navy intelligence. This was not something that was said by anyone else. This was revealed by as they did an assessment on the Chinese shipbuilding capabilities, and this does not even include the shipbuilding capabilities of just domestic vessels or something like that. We're talking about in a military capacity that China's shipbuilding capacity is over 200 times that of the United States and NATO. How can you even think about going to war in a position like that when your economy is in decline? And Carl, we got to go back to something, man. And I got to let you address this. We just talked about the imprint that China has on the economy. Now, if the Chinese decide with all of the provocations, and we're not talking about Russia at this moment, we're talking about the Chinese at this moment, with all of the provocations over Taiwan, and the one China policy, if China decides to embargo America, think about the economy, the U.S. economy that is already spiraling out of control. And think about all of the bankruptcies, all of the mass unemployments. And then when you think about the shelves going empty, those are stores closing up. You're thinking about the shipping from the trains to the planes to the trucks. All of those people are out of jobs. Then you think about the knock-on effect, because now that all of these things have closed and all of these people are out of jobs, they can't repay the loans to the banks that they borrowed from. And now you have a banking problem on top of that. Do these people ever sit down and think about the knock-on effect of their irrational, insane policies?
That's funny, because some of them obviously do think about it, because I just watched the ridiculous 60 minutes segment with the U.S. ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns. So I guess the Burns probably received a memo from National Security Council. Maybe Jake Sullivan tell him to invite 60 Minutes to China, and all 60 Minutes did, instead of interviewing Chinese people in China, they just interviewed the U.S. ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, and he said yes, if we cut off trade with China, right now there's 750,000 U.S. jobs that's directly tied to exporting goods to China, and this is which present a problem. Now, of course, the real figure is much larger than 750,000 jobs. 750 jobs are just the U.S. The Americans who work in companies that are exporting to China. Then there's also Americans who are involved in like taking imports from China and distributing in the United States, and there's an add-on effect of their family. But in the end, after all that, Burns said, but we don't want to live in a world that's dominated by China. And I'm like, buddy, you are the U.S. ambassador to China. You live in Beijing. You literally live in a Chinese-dominated world. And I mean, like, you just better get used to it, or get the fuck out. I mean, what the hell are you doing? You suck ass as a diplomat. You are in China to represent United States. Your goal should have been building bridges between two nations. But instead, what you're doing is you're just hosting 60 Minutes to do propaganda, another anti-China propaganda. Like, why do you even need it? Like, you should just, and this is the same person, of course, tweeting out that Victoria Nuland is the heart and soul of the U.S. Foreign Service. I mean, like these people are. I don't know, man. It's they kind of know the truth, but they refuse to admit it.
Well, refusing to acknowledge something that's obvious is not going to stop it from being the truth. This is what I'm saying. Only people who are so um, encapsulated into their own minds can separate the truth and reality from their little fictional world of U.S. hegemony and stuff like that. That day is over. That day has been over. And what we're seeing now is the ramifications. A lot of people like to think that this financial crisis started in 2008. Some think it was 2010. Some think it was 2002 when they removed the Glass-Steagall Act. But I want to say that it even happened prior to that. Some people say, well, it was when the world went off the gold and silver standard in 71. I say it was before that. And what we're living in the contortion of the dead snake right now. You know how if you cut the head of the snake off and the snake body moves for like 3 hours. This is what we're doing. America started robbing its currency of silver in the 60s. People were not aware of that. If you go back, the currency, the coins were 90% and 30% silver. In 65, no quarters, no dimes were printed in silver anymore. Then from 65 to 69, the half dollars and the dollars were silver. They cut that off. And when Charles de Gaulle and the rest of them started seeing that America was living way above her means, and Richard Nixon said, the U.S. dollar is as good as gold. And Charles de Gaulle said, well, then give me gold then. And that move right there exposed America's weak hand economically. And that's why the United States had to go around the world and try to find some way to keep the dollar relevant. So they went into the Arabian Peninsula with the Petro-Dollar. And from that point on, they have been trying to maintain that at all costs, because the dollar, the US dollar, is the life's blood of not only the military machine, but of the Western world, because the euro and the British pound is tied to that too. And they derive wealth from that dollar being the reserve currency. What say you on that, Carl?
Or France, what would France would be without the wealth extraction from Africa?
That's right.
Like France would just be another third world nation without all the capitals it extracts from the African nations. And right now we're living through interesting times, Rashid. I mean, this is why I'm in Bali.
Yeah.
And this, what this reminds me of that recent video of a bunch of youth who went into protest for calling for ceasefire in Palestine. And I forgot, it's one of the U.S. senator talk. I forgot the senator's name, but all the protesters were standing and shouting "Free Palestine," and all the boomer audience, they're literally just like covering their ears and then standing up and telling them to shut up. And this is, for me, this is like perfect epitomize America. It's like all these people who are in power. They are literally trying to, they're covering their ears so to protect themselves from the reality of the world.
So, Mehdi, a channel member, he's asking you on something that you said earlier about the U.S. deploying Marines or Green Berets to an island. It's a Chinese island, so we won't even say a Taiwanese island. That's a Chinese island because Taiwan is a part of China.
Taiwan is an island, right? So if you look at the map, this will be the Chinese coast. This will be the island of Taiwan. The Kinmen Island will be like right here. I mean, it's literally, but like even the even under the so-called Republic of China, ROC on Taiwan, Kinmen Island is defined as part of the Fujian province because It's right next to it. And yes, the green that they deploy Green Berets to the Kinmen Islands. Again, it's just an act of provocation. It's not, but I think that provocation backfired because that eventually led to the Chinese Coast Guard now patrolling the waters all around the Kinmen Island, and there's nothing U.S. can do about it. I mean, what U.S. is going to send its aircraft carrier there or what? I mean, it's people could Google Kinmen Island, Kimmen, just see where Kinmen Island is located. It's really ridiculous why they deploy Green Berets over there. But that's an island that United States were contemplating because in 1958, the Taiwan Strait crisis, when the PLA started bombarding Kinmen Islands, that's the time when U.S. planned to use nuclear weapon against mainland China if there was a People's Liberation Army landing on the Kinmen Islands. Daniel Ellsberg revealed that like a few years back before he died. Yeah.
Wait, don't forget, Carl, that they're also trying to force the hand of the government in South Korea so that the United States can turn Jeju Island into a naval facility, which is close to China also.
Yeah, they're trying to build a whole series of military bases installation along the so-called First Island chain. This is why they're going back to the Philippines. Now they have 9 military bases in the Philippines that U.S. military can access. But again, they already have their hands full in Ukraine and in Middle East. I don't think they will be able to extricate themselves from either of those situations in a long time because it doesn't look like they're ready to finally settle, to have a peaceful settlement in Ukraine crisis yet. I mean, this could have ended in March 2022, but for Boris Johnson flying to tell Ukrainians, no, we got your back, right? I mean, we all know right now the obstacles for negotiation is not from the Ukrainian side. They were ready to negotiate in Istanbul in March 2022. They were that negotiation was stopped because of the West, and right now I think the West is also too busy, particularly United States, too busy with the re-election. They're not gonna, I don't think they will be able to stir up the water. I mean, they will try to stir up the water, but I don't think there will be any active hot confrontation anytime soon in South China Sea.
Saint Fluffy Snow says, Jimin, the most famous island city in China, is incredible. Walking tour by Walk East. He's telling you you got to check that out. Evidently, he's speaking from experience.
Yeah. The walking tour by Walk East. I think it's a channel where they walk. They literally just walk through different Chinese cities and without any dialogue and just let you show how the city is from a ground level. I think I saw a couple of their videos. It's pretty good. I mean, people can check out. And Xiamen is a city that the U.S. Green Beret would see from Kinmen across the water, which they cannot go. So they might as well get on YouTube and watch what they're missing.
Cold-blooded. That was cold-blooded. General Member Mehdi says, Mr. Zha, do you see Chinese commercial airlines being a player in the future?
I mean, they're already a player in China. I think they one of their big challenge is right now is for Chinese domestically produced planes. They already had a first important step. Now a lot of the people are saying, oh, but the Chinese plane is only Chinese in name only because a lot of parts are sourced from American and European companies. But that actually is how they will get certified, because right now to get for aircraft to get certified internationally, if everything is domestically produced China, they're going to have a hard time to get that certification. So what they will do right now is build up this plane with all these Western parts, but little by little, they're going to replace each component with indigenous Chinese made parts after it got its certification. And I think this is just one of those industries that China will eventually come to master, just like how they master electric vehicles. Because back for when the Western companies entered China, right? They saw China is a huge market. In fact, GM makes more cars in China for the Chinese market than they make in United States. In 2008, when GM declared bankruptcy, I went to China in 2010. I met one of the daughter of my dad's friend. She worked at GM China. She's like, I don't know what GM America is doing, man. We are making money over here. We are making money head over heel. I don't know what's wrong with the GM America. And because at that time, one of the hottest, I remember one of the hottest selling brand in China was Buick. My cousin had a Buick in China. But right now, the way the U.S. and European companies would do to stay a couple generation ahead of the Chinese car company is they have these joint ventures and all that, but they always they don't put their latest production in China. So the technology they share with their Chinese partner is always a couple generations behind. Mm-hmm. So that's how they keep the Chinese car manufacturers a couple generations behind their European and American counterparts. But with the electric vehicle, the Chinese manufacturers were able to leapfrog that technology, mm-hmm. because they're like, okay, you got the internal combustion engine thing down. Okay, that's fine. We're just gonna figure out how to work with the electric batteries, and then it opened a whole new world. And now Chinese EV is gonna dominate much of the world market outside U.S. because I don't think U.S. is going to allow Chinese electric vehicle to sell in U.S. They won't allow. Yeah, they're not going to, because look, right now China is making like cars in like $10,000 range. I mean, U.S. is not going to allow that because I don't think they're not going to allow cars to be selling around $10,000, man, in U.S. because that's going to put a lot of other car companies out of business. So yeah, so unfortunately, but in other market, I mean, in other market, China EV is already leading and dominating, and in China has one of the most important car market in the world. The EV is already dominating. So I see the Chinese airplane industry will follow the path eventually of the Chinese EV industry, and that will have a ripple effect for the Chinese airline, et cetera, et cetera. And even now, Chinese airline have one big advantage over its Western peers, that they can fly over Russia. They can fly over the airspace of Russia. This is one of the biggest complaints by the U.S. and European airlines. Oh, Chinese airlines have unfair advantage. It's like, tell your government to waive the sanctions. It's so easy, like this is a self-inflicted problem. You can't go over the Russian airspaces because of U.S. sanctions. And so, yeah, so I remember when I flew from U.S. to China last October, I actually flew on a Hong Kong-based airline, Cathay Pacific, because Hong Kong is part of China. So we flew over North Pole through Russia to Hong Kong. So yeah, so U.S. and the Europeans have to go around. they have to, yeah.
I want, before we address a few more questions in the chat, I want to bring something to your attention. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's some Chinese companies like Temu and Wish. Are you familiar with? The United States is now talking about bringing them under sanctions to preventing U.S. citizens from buying products from Temu and Wish. I mean, can you get more petty than that?
I mean, like, look, we have U.S. senators saying Chinese garlic is a national security threat. I mean, so I'm not surprised because let's face it, like if you look at the Western brands, all of them are produced in China. Also, it says that they slap on the Western brand and they can turn around and sell at double and triple the price of the cost in the Western market. And what what these Chinese website Temu and Wish they do is they cut out the middleman. They directly sell from factories from China. So this is why it threatened the bottom line of these Western multinationals whose profit comes from being this middleman, who being able to charge this premium. So of course, there's going to be campaigns on banning Temu. I'm sure, like all the fund. If you trace the money, if someone bothered to follow the money trail, I'm sure you lead to all these Western multinationals.
Mm-hmm. So we'll take a few more questions. Let's see. It was one in particular. Okay, this is from channel member Mehdi. He says, "I live by the Bath Ironworks shipyard where the Zimwalt was built. That piece of crap that the United he said they're having a hard time finding qualified tradesmen to work at the shipyard." Before you say something about that, Carl, do you remember when that was touted as the warship of the future and that it was the most advanced warship of the future? And then when they sailed it out, it had to be towed through the Panama Canal because it broke down twice.
Yeah, and then so the U.S. Navy finally gave up, and guess what they did with it? They sold them to Australians, who are the suckers for. Because I remember Charles Lee said this, like, U.S. doesn't want to fight China by itself. It wants to get its allies to fight China for them. So they're trying to get Japan, South Korea, and also these ally and vassal state to be their palm to fight China in the front line. But these vassal states are also not stupid. The only one that's stupid enough to fight the war for United States is maybe Australia. I'm sorry for Australians here, but the Australians are also end up being the sucker who bought all those like Zoom ships that the U.S. Navy retired. And what Mehdi said about the experienced tradesperson and craftsman, that's a serious issue because U.S. have deindustrialized so much, and people don't realize it's it's when the supply chain is also about having skilled workers, and U.S. have deindustrialized so much, they have a generation gap in skilled workers, because they don't have new young workers being trained in the same trade craft because they don't have the same industry anymore. And this is a problem U.S. is facing with reindustrialization. They even if they want to relocate, reshoring their plant, they still got to train a whole new generations of workers. That's not a problem in China because in China, they're continually upgrading their skill sets.
And Carl, don't forget, you were being diplomatic about it. Be honest about it. One of the main reasons for this thing that Mehdi is talking about is because they feel privileged, the youth feel privileged, and they're lazy as hell today in America. And well, you were being diplomatic about it, but let's cut the chase. You got to admit.
Well, I mean, like it's about incentives, right? I mean, like right now, all the incentives in U.S. society is to incentivize them to be YouTubers. That's why we're here. I mean, like they're incentivizing them to meet social media influencers, to be YouTubers, to be anything other than people who actually make stuff.
Yeah. Incognito, and this is something I want to address before you address. Incognito says, but the U.S. still has a strong nuclear military despite the country's problems. U.S. nuclear power like 10 times China's nuclear power. I want to address that before you do, and I'll let you address it right after. First, it doesn't take many nukes to destroy somebody. That's one thing. Two things is that when we're talking about nuclear, the Soviet Union was the largest nuclear power too, and it collapsed, right? And so we have to look at that model right there. The United States is still a nuclear power, but look at what happened to the Soviet Union when the economy collapsed, when the political system was in disarray. Look, and then you'll have a blueprint of what could happen to the United States. And third, I want to say this: I don't know how true this is, but they did, some students and some professors did a dissertation or a paper on China's nuclear weapon, and they called it the Great Underground Wall or something like that. And they said that China could have thousands of nuclear missiles underground. And I'm not saying that this is a sure thing, but they did a lot of research, and they said that they believe that China has more nuclear missiles than they have accounted for, and they have underground cities everywhere across China that the United States and their intelligence community cannot pierce. What say you on these matters?
Well, first of all, it's true. I mean, U.S. it's the second biggest nuclear power after Russia. U.S. have about 5,000 nuclear warheads, and people say, "Oh, look, U.S. can destroy the Earth multiple times." Why do you need to destroy the Earth multiple times, right? What I heard is, sure, U.S. can destroy China multiple times, but China only need to destroy U.S. once. I mean, like China has right now, according to publicly released information, the guess estimate is China have about 400 nuclear warheads, and they're still increasing. They're still increasing their nuclear arsenals. I mean, 400 nuclear warheads is enough for all the major U.S. cities. I mean, the thing about nukes is that once you have to use them, it's already Armageddon. It's already end of the world. So in the meantime, nukes are actually pretty expensive to maintain. They're not an asset, they're a liability. When you have 5,000 nuclear warheads, you need to spend quite a lot on the maintenance. That's one of the drain that put a drain on the Soviet Union. And speaking about Soviet Union, right now, U.S. I mean, I see a lot of comparison to U.S. and the late Soviet era, like Brezhnev era of U.S. intellectual elite always talk about the late Soviet ossified elite. They can't respond to change, and they're not aware of the changing world around them. I mean, everything that can be said about late Soviet Union apply equally to United States today, and if not more so. I mean, right now, because the Soviet, they still, they still have a couple paths available to them. It's just the Gorbachev chose poorly. But United States, I mean, I don't see a good path forward, man, because right now the elite is so entrenched. The stupid, greedy elite that got us to this point. They're so entrenched. I just don't see them getting thrown out their office. It's just a the Democrats and the Republicans are all the same. Biden, Trump, you're not going to get fundamental differences. So I honestly, I think we are in the, I don't know, we are in the worst, so at least a Soviet collapse, you still have, the transition is still mostly peaceful. I don't know if I can say about United States if there's a collapse going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be peaceful.
All right, there we are. There we are.
Oh, okay.
They muted me for a second. That was me.
Okay.
The dashboard does that. I don't know why they do that to me, but they do it. But we're going to go forward. I want to bring something up that you just said. And referring to the United States always boasting that they can destroy the world 30 times over. Have the people ever thought about that you're the loser too? Because you live on the same planet. So if you destroy the world one time over, you're lost too. Where are you going to live? You can't go live on the moon, Mars, or Saturn. So, I mean, these people are insane. They don't think outside the box. They think in this little imperial room that they're in, that hey, if I get the most nuclear weapons, I can win. Hell, if the nuclear weapons are used, everybody loses. So I mean, and do they ever sit down? Do you think that they ever rationalize these things? Because 30 times over, you can have it 40 times over. If you destroy it one time, the other 29 times don't matter. So what have you to say about that, Carl, before we leave?
I have nothing else to add. I mean, that's just a fact. It's like we all lose in a nuclear war. I mean, unless you have a secret a nuclear bunker somewhere, you can play Fallout in real life. But that's not realistic. Right now, I don't see I don't think boasting about the strength of your nuclear arsenal is it's a healthy sign. It's not a sign of a healthy society.
Hey, Mehdi says this before we go. Mehdi says, Mr. Zha, do you think that the United States might enter into its own century of shame?
I mean, we're in the century of humiliation already. Biden humiliated himself every day. Like this is. I mean, look at the so-called prosperity guardian in the Red Sea, the U.S. operation. U.S. Purportedly the #1 military power in the world, and now on the other side you have Yemen. Yemen is a naval power of the 21st century because they're redirecting 11% of the world shipping traffic away from the Red Sea to be around the Cape of Good Hope, all the way around Africa. So I mean, yeah, this is they can't. This is a country that after 20 years of Afghanistan, right? The only thing they have accomplished is they put Taliban back into power. So I mean, like, you kidding me? This is we are living in the century of humiliation already. It's just the question is how much worse it's gonna get.
Carl, on our next go around when we do this show again, I want to bring on Juan. I forgot to bring him on this time. He's the host of Real Truth Talk, and he had a host of questions that he wanted to ask you. He really follows you, and he likes your answer. So I'm going to bring him on next time so that we can chop it up together, okay? And again, my brother, thank you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rashid. Anytime.
All right, man.
I love to talk.
Everybody, thank you all for joining us on the Red Pill Diaries. We go out the same way that we always come in, with love in our heart for each and every one of you who loves truth. But know that the love that we have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the true and living God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. And before you go off the air, remember this. This week, we're going to have a channel member stream, and this week we're going to have a Patreon stream. So join us on both of the streams. Become a channel member. Join us on that stream. Become a patron. Join us on that stream. We're going to talk about some things that we can't talk about on this stream, and I'm going to show you what was offered to me by the powers that be, okay? I can't do it on this stream because I don't know what will happen on this, but I'm going to give it to the people that continue to support the channel. Hit the like and the subscribe. Share the video. Tell others about this platform. Tell others about Carl. Please go subscribe to Carl's channel. And on that note, hey, we're going to go out of here. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody.